My name is Rebecca Corduner, and I work at Parkinson and Movement Disorder Alliance. So grateful to have all of you here today, and was just wondering if you all wanted to put in the chat, which if you are new to us or to Zoom is right down at the lower part of your screen. If you want to put in where you're tuning in from, we love seeing all across the country, across the world, where people are tuning in for our programs. And so I'm out here in Southern California. We got some people from Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. Larry is out up there in Canada, representing up there. So today's program is a collaboration with Parkinson TV. This is a Parkinson TV live program. This is a relationship that we've had with the University of Rochester for a number of years. And we are just so grateful for those of you who are familiar with the Ending PD book and Dr. Ray Dorsey over at the University of Rochester. He is a wonderful friend of ours, and so is the University of Rochester. And we just absolutely love the Parkinson TV program. They have several seasons that they've done that are on YouTube. Please check them out. But wanted to also introduce Iyad, who is from the University of Rochester, to just tell you a little bit about Parkinson TV.
Thank you, Rebecca. So I'll just share these couple of slides here that kind of just very concisely summarize what this season is about and the previous seasons a little bit. So with this third season, we called it The Long Road to Hope. And the premise was interviewing 12 people with inspirational stories who have Parkinson's and who are all aiming for one mission, in this case, ending Parkinson's disease. And the ways in which they've embraced the tenets of the PACT, prevention, advocacy, care, and treatment. Larry Gifford's story definitely falls most prominently in the advocacy camp, and as you will see from the episode. And worth noting that the episode that I will show is part of the discrete episodes we're releasing. The 12 of these individuals have their own discrete episodes that talk about their lives. However, the film itself, The Long Road to Hope, is actually combining all of their stories into these chapters of PACT. And you can see Larry's story in more detail in terms of advocacy in that film on your own time. I highly encourage watching that. And then for today is going to be a preview of his episode. This second slide kind of talks about the origins of the idea and specifically about season 3. So in 2017, the University of Rochester collaborated with the Parkinson Netherlands team led by Dr. Bas Bloem. And we founded the Parkinson TV series. Season 1, as you can see from this picture, was more like an event, a roundtable discussion of topics relating to Parkinson's. Season 2 tackled the common mental health conditions that affect patients of Parkinson's disease. And that's when we started the whole episode format, where we released specific segments about the people interviewed. With season 3, we really wanted to take it to the next level and put a full feature film together instead of just the episodes. So we weaved together the 12 individual stories into a full-length documentary film, and we accompanied that by a commentary from Ray Dorsey and Bas Bloem. And of course, as you can see, these are 2 thumbnails as examples. We're also releasing these shorter segments. So in a little bit, I can begin with previewing Larry's segment that released this last Tuesday.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And so as Iyad said, we are going to be playing Larry's segment today. Larry is with us. He's waving right now, if you can see him. And we're also joined by Bradley McDaniels. So just a little bit about both of them. Bradley McDaniels is an assistant professor in rehabilitation and health services at the Department of College of Health and Public Service at the University of North Texas in Denton, Texas. That is a mouthful. He studied at Eastern Kentucky University and then went on to complete a Master of Science degree in rehabilitation counseling and then a PhD in rehabilitation counseling, education, research, and policy from the University of Kentucky. And many of you may actually recognize him from a holistic we did back in October. One of Bradley's main areas of focus is talking about the meaning of life and the meaning in life. So we're going to be chatting a little bit about that today. And then of course, the video that we're going to watch in just a few moments is going to actually introduce Larry probably much better than I could reading. But he is the co-founder of PD Avengers, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, and hosts the podcast When Life Gives You Parkinson's, which details his journey with the disease as a guy in his mid-40s with a family and a career. He was diagnosed with young onset Parkinson's disease in August of 2017, and his show was named Best Podcast by RTDNA West Region in 2020 and listed on the Best of 2018 playlists by Apple Podcasts. He's also serves as an ambassador for the World Parkinson Congress in 2022 in Barcelona. It's actually 2023 in Barcelona, and is on the Michael J. Fox Foundation Patient Council, hosts the foundation's monthly Parkinson podcast, and he's worked for more than 30 years in radio throughout North America. The Ohio native is now living in Vancouver, Canada, as he shares. So that's where he's tuning in from, and is the national director of talk radio for Chorus Entertainment. So without further ado, I'm going to have Ed play Larry's introduction, that his video. Afterwards, we are going to take questions and thoughts. We want this to be really interactive in the chat, so please feel free to put any questions or anything into the chat, and we'll do our best to get those answered in a very hopefully interactive Q&A with Bradley and Larry. So Ed, if you could play the video, that would be great.
Awesome. Thanks, Rebecca. And just to preface this video, I do want to say a special thanks to Larry for collaborating in another way other than appearing in the episodes. You heard his voice during 2 weeks ago's Amy Lindbergh's episode, and he actually narrated all 11 episodes, of course, other than his that you're about to see for the series, and it's been excellent narration. Thanks so much, Larry. I'll go ahead and share my screen.
Hi, I'm Larry Gifford. You've been hearing my voice on the last 11 stories about Parkinson's. I bet you didn't know that voice belongs to somebody who has Parkinson's too. I was 45 years old when I was diagnosed, but I started feeling the symptoms much earlier. But let me take you back. I was born in Westerville, Ohio, a quiet, peaceful village just north of Columbus, Ohio, the state capital. Well, Westerville is a place where the Giffords have been for many generations. In fact, I think we go back 4 generations to Otterbein College, which is in Westerville, including myself. That's where I graduated from, and I learned how to do radio. Radio has been my passion. I've been doing it for more than 30 years. I was on the air for a while, and now I'm the national director of talk radio for a company in Canada called Chorus. I was actually voted at one point in high school to be the one person that never left Westerville. And I actually traveled quite far from Westerville. Next stop was Dayton, Ohio, where I was doing radio, and then I moved on to Philadelphia. And that's where I met my wife, Rebecca. We've been married for 22 years, and she's been on this journey with me. You know, first it was a radio journey, and now it's a Parkinson's journey. In the year 2000, we moved to Los Angeles, and we started doing some hiking in the mountains. And it was one New Year's morning, she goes, "Do you hear that?" I'm like, "Hear what?" She goes, "You're not lifting your feet." I'm like, "What do you mean?" She goes, "I'm trying to enjoy the peacefulness here, yet it's clomp, drag, clomp, drag. Can you just pick up your feet?" I'm like, "Oh, sure." And I try, and I'm like having troubles not making a lot of noise. I realized I was having troubles figuring out my gait. But I didn't think anything of it. I thought, well, maybe I'm out of shape, or I'm overweight, or, you know, I'd never been 30 before. Maybe this is what getting old is like. And then as time went on, I collected more symptoms. And, you know, through the journey, we went to Seattle, and we went back to California. And then I got a job in Vancouver, Canada, and we moved there. And shortly after we moved to Canada, I was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. And I had collected about 7 different symptoms, you know, but it was the tremor that sent me to the doctor. I was talking to my son, and I was handing him a glass of water like this, and it was shaking like that, but it was spilling over the sides. And he goes, "Dad, why are you shaking so bad?" And I'm like, "I don't know." And he goes, "Shouldn't you see a doctor?" I'm like, "Probably should, son." And that started us trying to figure out what was going on. At first, they thought it was MS, and then they sent me to the neurologist for Parkinson's, and he's like, "Yeah, you got Parkinson's." I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know if I was going to die. I didn't know if I was going to be of any use to my industry anymore. Like, was I going to get fired from my job? Like, how does that work? What happens now? Like, all of our plans that we had just seemed to like go poof. There was no way to plan. There was no way to prepare. You had no control. The only thing I could control was me. And I controlled myself straight to the liquor store for quite a while. I'm not proud of that, but it's what it came down to. And then I'm listening to some podcasts, and I'm listening to the Michael J. Fox Foundation podcast, and I hear this voice, and it's Ray Dorsey, Dr. Ray Dorsey from Rochester. I'll never forget it. And he's like, "Listen, if people with Parkinson's don't start sharing their stories, we will never raise enough attention to raise enough money to do enough research to do anything with Parkinson's, let alone cure it." And I thought, oh my God, there it is. I'm a storyteller. I've been a storyteller all my life. Here I am in Canada with a national platform. We've got radio stations, TV stations, websites, and I'm sitting here sulking. How can I expect anybody else to tell their story if I'm not willing to tell mine? And so that's when I started the podcast, When Life Gives You Parkinson's. And that podcast, we're now in our 4th season, but it led to me going to the World Parkinson Congress in Kyoto. And while I was there, I realized I was not alone. And we showed up in this room, and there's like 70 people that are YOPD, that are like around my age. I've never been in a room with a couple of them, let alone 70 of them. And I thought, holy crap, we can do something. We've got leverage here. These are 70 people that are already saying, I'm an advocate for Parkinson's, or they wouldn't be at the conference. So that's when we really started to say, let's do something. And it was the next spring, right as the pandemic of COVID was starting, that the book, Ending Parkinson's Disease, came out by Dr. Ray Dorsey and his colleagues, Michael Okun, Todd Scher, and Boz Bloom. And we latched onto that. And a lot of us got together on Zoom, and we started talking about the book. And they're like, "Hey, it's a prescription for action. You guys gonna do anything?" I'm like, oh man, Ray always gets me into these things. Yeah, okay, we'll do something. And that's when we launched PD Avengers. It's interesting. I get a lot of people who approach me because I'm the president of the PD Avengers going, "What can I do?" And I turn it around on them and go, "What can you do?" I'm a storyteller. So I started a podcast, which started a movement and serves people. But you may have a different superpower than I do, probably do. So what is it? What can you do? What can you add to the community? How can you make a difference? Because we all can do it. We all have something. It doesn't matter what it is. How do you apply it? How do you make it matter? Do something. We need you.
If you want to know who's going to change the future of Parkinson's disease, you just met him. Larry Gifford and his friends, Dr. Sonia Mather and Tim Haig, have formed PD Avengers, a global grassroots organization that's seeking to end, eradicate, get rid of, prevent, and otherwise abolish Parkinson's disease from the face of the earth. And they're going to do it with your help. They have over 4,000 members from every state in the United States, from every province in Canada, and from over 70 different countries. But they can't do it alone. Join the PD Avengers like I have. You can do so for free by just going to pdavengers.com. And Mr. Gifford has a great gift, and that gift is storytelling. But we all have gifts, you and me, and we need to apply those gifts to preventing and ending Parkinson's disease.
Well, that was such a wonderful clip, such a powerful, I think it's 7 minutes and change. And I'm just so grateful that we have you here with us today, Larry. and also you, Bradley. And so I know, Bradley, with your experience and your background, well, first of all, I guess, could you share a little bit about that background, your connection to Parkinson's disease, and then and what you're doing in your research, and how did watching that clip, what did that make you think of? What did that bring up for you?
Yeah, so Larry, that was awesome. I always enjoy watching that. I've watched it multiple times now. And a little bit about me, you know, I have a circuitous route to the Parkinson's world. I spent almost 20 years in the pharma industry in a variety of positions. And 11 years ago, my mom was diagnosed with PD. And at 42, I said, I'm a little old to go to medical school to be a neurologist. I'd like to not have to retire as soon as I start. So I said, PhD is the next best route. And I figured, you know, I want to go, I want to get done, get out and connect with people who have Parkinson's and find out ways that we can improve quality of life. You know, I, like everyone else, hope and pray for a cure. I really do. But there are a lot of things that we can do along the way while we let those who are working on that do what they do. And so my research focus is largely quality of life, but that's a really big term, and it's really challenging to define what that means. One of the areas that I found that is immensely important to quality of life is meaning in life and finding purpose. What is it that gives your life significance, right? And I hear that in Larry's story. I heard there were a variety of things, and you know, you and I, Rebecca, before everybody got on, we were just chatting a little bit about some things that I heard Larry say that spurred some thought. And one of those was he talked about, as he got to the diagnosis, his plans went poof, right? That was meaningful to me. And, you know, Larry, I would like to hear you talk about that, right? And then I'll share some of my thoughts from a research perspective, what that means to me. But I think that feeling of poof, anybody who's on this call who's got PD, who is a caregiver of someone with PD, or is any way connected to Parkinson's, absolutely understands what that means.
Yeah, I mean, Parkinson's is not on anybody's bucket list. So when you're told you have it, everything you thought you want to do for the rest of your life becomes truncated, and you're like, can I do that anymore? How will people treat me? It's almost instantly that personal internal stigma begins to build up, where you begin to doubt yourself, you begin to doubt your worth, you begin to doubt, you know, your purpose. You feel untethered from your own life, and it's a horrifying feeling. Like I didn't even know if my family would want to be associated with. Like you lose all perspective on everything you thought you knew about yourself.
Yeah, you know, and I think about that, and one of the challenges that, and I know I'm preaching to the choir, right? Most of you guys know the stuff I'm getting ready to say, is you get to the movement disorder doctor and they're talking to you about movement issues, because Parkinson's is a movement disorder, right? But there are all of these other things that are going on that are well beyond movement. And we know the literature is really clear that the greatest predictor of poor quality of life are the non-motor features. Those are the things that we struggle with, right? And one of the words and research areas, Larry, that made me think of is demoralization, right? Demoralization is a construct that's been used for years in cancer literature. There was just a paper in 2018 that talked about it in Parkinson's disease, but it's not been touched. And what that encompasses is this psychological state of hopelessness and helplessness. And it's different from depression. It's not going to respond to an SSRI or an SRNI. And it's one of those things that you kind of have to work through. And I would just, you know, you talked about in your story, but I'd like to just hear from you. What was it that helped you navigate that hopelessness, helplessness, lack of purpose, unknown, if you will?
Well, it's kind of a combination of things. First off, I have a great supportive wife and son, and so it starts at home. And my sister who's here watching, and my brothers and my mom. And they've all been great and supportive and scared and worried as much as I was at the time too, not knowing what was to come. But I guess for me, it was a combination of that. I did some support groups. I found some friends that had PD, some new friends, people that I could sort of connect with locally here. You begin to figure out what it is that you can plan for in order to find hope. The hope was a really important topic on the podcast too. Like, how do you cultivate hope? How do you make hope? Where do you find hope? And it's not outside yourself. And so it's not in the wine bottle, and it's not in the whiskey bottle, and it's certainly it's nobody's holding it for you. You gotta make your own. And what I found was just being able to go, tomorrow I'm looking forward to lunch, or next week I can't wait till we go to the bed and breakfast up the coast, or whatever it is I could look forward to. For me, that's how I cultivated my hope, was just making sure that I could plan for the future, a little bit at a time. And even if I couldn't make the scheduled event because of my symptoms or everything, it gave me something to look forward to. And then even if you're disappointed, I mean, you had hope, because now you've disappointed yourself because you couldn't activate, but that means you had some hope to go.
Absolutely. And that actually brings up two questions that I guess for both of you. So first, that what I'm hearing, Larry, is you chatting a little bit about the practice of gratitude, which, Bradley, I know you've talked a bit about and is in articles that you've written and all of that. But then also this idea, and it's throughout COVID, we've heard this word so much, is the idea of resilience. And I'm always that person that goes, well, but what does that really mean? And how do we put that into practice? So I don't know if either of you have some thoughts on that.
Well, I'll just say, one of the things that I also practice is, in addition to gratitude, is mindfulness, and then also finding ways to connect to the earth, make sure I'm in my body, make sure I'm grounded, make sure like I'm set. I try to reset myself throughout the day, because you can get lost in computer screens, and especially I don't know if anybody else here who has Parkinson's does this, but like I can realize I've been watching some series of YouTube videos for like 3 hours, and I don't know where the time went. I'm like, what? Because if you forget to take your meds, you suddenly, everything just slows down, and you just sort of zombie out. I get in my wife calls my bubble, and I'm just sort of, I'm there, but I'm not there. So it's which can be great, but then you're not engaging with life. You're just letting life happen. And it's much more fun to engage in life.
Yeah. And, Rebecca, you mentioned some interesting constructs there, some things that are worthy of study. And resilience is clearly one. One of the things that I studied in my dissertation that I've published since is this idea of positive psychological capital. And it includes hope, optimism, resilience, and self-efficacy. People who have those four things are going to do better in life. It's pretty intuitive.
What are those four things again? Say that again.
Hope, optimism, resilience, and self-efficacy. If you remember the acronym HERO, hope, and then efficacy would be 2, resilience would be 3, optimism would be 4.
We all are superheroes. We all have our superhero powers.
That's it. And so, Dr. Subramanian and I have spent some time, we're doing some work on self-efficacy right now, looking at the role of, do I think I can do it? Right? You tell someone to go exercise and they think they can't do it, they're not going to go. Right? So how do we cultivate that? And resilience is one of those things that's a really important characteristic of people who do well, right? And what resilience, the simple definition is the ability to bounce back after adversity. You have to have adversity, and then you bounce back from that. And those are the two things that are necessary to make one resilient. And there's another feature of resilience that's fascinating in research. It's called post-traumatic growth. Resilience is when someone bounces back to their, let's say Larry's diagnosed with PD, and he has, you have this adversity, and you struggle with it, you deal with it, then you finally bounce back and you get back to kind of the mindset where Larry was before. That's resilience. Post-traumatic growth takes it a step further, and it says people end up better after the adversity than they did before they started. And that goes back to the meaning in life and Viktor Frankl in Man's Search for Meaning. And that's why the meaning in life is so important to me. It's flourishing through suffering is really the way they describe it. And those people who have those characteristics, who can grow those characteristics, tend to do better. And to me, it's all around meaning in life. Because I would argue, Larry, you and I have not had this conversation, but I would argue that when I heard you say, there it is, storyteller. That's what you said in your thing. To me, I heard new meaning.
Right.
New meaning in your life.
New purpose.
Boom. And
and I'll tell you, what it took was I had to stop resisting and accept it, and realize, and not just accept it, but take ownership of it, and realize this was part of who I am moving forward. And that gave me the more you resist, the harder it becomes, because the stronger the Parkinson's will bite back. For instance, I don't know if you can tell, but I'm not a big exerciser. So my resisting exercise in my brain was my resisting Parkinson's. Mm-hmm. But I wasn't resisting Parkinson's. I was giving Parkinson's the leg up by not exercising. So it was just having to make that mind shift of, I can't fight against this and win. I have to embrace it. It's kind of Tai Chi. You bring the weight towards you and you turn it, as opposed to taking the punch in the face.
Yeah. And I think your point's well taken, because you can resist all you want. Parkinson's isn't going anywhere. I mean, it's just not going to get you there. You could sit home and go, you know what? I'm not gonna do the things I need to do. And the doctor's going to go, okay.
Yeah. But and what it comes down to, though, is you're in such a state of mind of hopelessness that you can wake up believing that maybe they got it wrong. Maybe I don't have Parkinson's. Yeah. And you could wake up every day that way for 3 months. And I'd tell my wife that. I said, I don't know if I have it. And I said, I'm just not going to take my pills to see what happens. Well, that was a mistake.
Right.
It's there.
And the other piece, Larry, that you've done and you've inspired many others to do is the piece of social connection, right? It's so missed. I was having this conversation yesterday with some folks from another organization about exercise and, social connection. Those aren't necessarily synonymous. They're not mutually exclusive, but exercise is critically important. But what we forget to talk about is the importance of social connection. And what we saw during COVID was what happened. People could still exercise. You could still get on a stationary bike and ride. You could still go for a walk in your neighborhood. But we lacked that social piece. Yeah. And Larry, you know this as much as anyone, how critical that is to engage it. For me, social connection is essential to my life. I love nothing more than I've talked to 2 other people who have PD already today and had those conversations just as friends. And we're just talking, and we're talking about Parkinson's and research and what they experience. And it's filling. I know, Larry, the people who know you and whom I talk to about you, and they say, he just gives me energy. critical. It's critical for our well-being, right?
Yeah, I love socialization. I love interacting with people, having those conversations. It challenges me. It invigorates me, and like, and I find, you know, when you have those connections, especially like after you go to an event like the World Parkinson Congress, where you have connections around the world. When you're up at 2 a.m, for somebody it's noon. So you always have somebody to talk to. Like just last night, I reached out to some local friends and just said, let's get a bunch of YOPD together and have dinner one night at a restaurant in 2 weeks. And so we're going to do that. Like now that we were feeling more confident about going out and about, and, you know, and I think, you know, sometimes it's just taking that step and saying, hey, you guys want to do something different? Or like I started improv for Parkinson's class, and we do improv training, but it's more about socialization than it is anything else. Just getting together and laughing.
Absolutely. And actually, we hear so often to what you were saying too, Bradley, about the exercise, which is so important. But what is it that you get when you go to a class of people? You know, I know support groups are, we obviously here at PMD Alliance, we help train support group leaders. We want more support groups in different areas. So just for those of you who maybe don't have something in your area, you know, we do have, like, we can start something. You know, one of the things that you said, Larry, in your video that stood out to me specifically, and it was especially the way you said it, is that you said, what can you do? And you said, do something, we need you. And so, you know, the idea of starting some sort of exercise group, or is there something in your community, like how can we bring people together? And so do you have, you know, Larry, something I think you've been so good at, especially with the PD Avengers, is starting to build those communities with people all across the world. So what advice would you give someone who's maybe like, oh, like nervous that's maybe they want to do something, they don't know where to start or how to start, or what would your advice be on that?
What I find is, if you don't know anybody who has Parkinson's, email me and you'll know me, and then I'll introduce you around. But if you have a group of folks, then reach out to them, and it just you can start with, do you want to have coffee, or do you want to have a tea, or do you have time to talk? And then from there it grows. Or go take an exercise class, just a one-off, you know, or whatever, or observe it, and you'll meet different people. You have to put yourself in position to be active in order to be active. The people aren't going to come into your living room and go to your chair where you're sitting watching TV and say, "Hey, how you doing?" You've got to be intentional with your time and with your actions. And so figure out what it is that you want to do, whether maybe it's pickleball, or maybe it's Frisbee, or maybe it's you want to play golf. I would go to Google. Google's great for that. Like I put in, you know, Parkinson's Vancouver golf, and you'll go, oh, there's a golf, people that love to golf, they have Parkinson's, and you just reach out. Now, I'm probably a little bit more outgoing than most, but you know, what I find is this community is probably the greatest open community that I've ever been a part of, and that as soon as somebody knows that you have Parkinson's and they have Parkinson's, your family.
Absolutely. And I think Larry may have frozen a little bit. So I'll jump in just a moment to say too, if you're looking for those things, and I think many of you know this, but we do have a comprehensive list of support groups and exercise groups on our website at pmdalliance.org, as well as an app that if you're going on vacation somewhere and want to find something, you know, in a different location, as well as something in your local community, you can search that just by the location on your phone. So just like Larry said, there are options. We're happy to help get you connected as well. Bradley, do you have anything that, while we wait for Larry to come back, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, you know, one of the things, as I kind of go back to my research in meaning and purpose, one of the ways that people find meaning is by helping others find meaning, right? And so part of that comes with being engaged with other people, being altruistic, just doing for someone else because it's the right thing to do. And it's amazing, you know, I'm a testament to the more I do for others, the more I get in return. I'm always repaid more than I give. And I think that's one area that that's important, is that, you know, so often we go into engagements with other people for what am I going to get out of it, rather than going into an engagement and saying, what can I bring to this situation? To Larry's point, what is it that you have? Maybe it's just, I'm a caring individual and I want to come be supportive of you. Maybe that's what you've got. That's great. That's a step. And like I said, you're always going to get more in return when you do that. And you'll grow in that and you'll become more comfortable doing that. Not everyone's an extrovert. Larry and I love to talk. I can go anywhere and talk and make friends and be great, but that's not my wife. I can't put my wife in a social setting and just say, go. And that's not her strength, but it's a matter of finding what it is. And she's really great with one-on-ones. And if that's your forte and that's your gifting, do that. Go have lunch with someone, just the two of you, and sit and talk and be a support person. You both have PD. Talk about what works, what the struggles have been, what hasn't worked. Be there for each other. And I think my experience, again, is those whom I know who do that are thriving.
What really propelled me is once I started the podcast, it gave me a reason to try new things. Gave me a reason to go and try different types of exercise, or to start doing improv, or to talking to people. Oh, you turned to comedy after Parkinson's. How's that help you? Oh, cool. And then I'd go out and try it, so putting yourself in, I didn't know what cannabis was going to do. So I went out and I bought some cannabis and tried it and documented it. Like, just sort of, what are you curious about? What excites you? And then just use that as a way to propel your passions.
And you had spoken about that in terms of joining the PD Avengers. Can you talk a little bit more about what that looks like for someone who might be interested in joining you all?
The first step is that it's just a quick, you fill out the form. It's your name, it's your country. We don't ask a lot of personal information. You give it to me, but we don't have anything to do with it. Other than we like to keep count of who's involved, and we like to keep track of you through email so we can send you information and updates. It is a think global, act local organization. So when you sign up, we will give you opportunities and ideas and stuff. For instance, the Spark. With our 100+ partners, we created the Spark last year, over the course of the last year, for World Parkinson Day and beyond. And so if you go to worldparkinsonsday.com right now, you can see the Spark if you haven't seen it before. And it's basically just an international symbol for Parkinson's awareness. And it is, when you see it, you know that this organization or these people are part of this creative group. That, the PD Avengers is also known as the coalition, the global alliance to end Parkinson's disease is our official name, but PD Avengers is just much more fun. And so when you sign up, you get access. We're building out our website so you can have more opportunities to do things. We have a calendar of events there that you can participate in, but more than any, and we have monthly meetings that you can call into. Like we have now over 5,000 members, individuals. We have over 100 partners. So we have a lot of people that are from all over the world that are showing up. We can go to 7 different countries in an hour and hear about what's going on. And it's all about inspiring you to do something local. Not everybody, the way we change the world is to change our world, our personal world. And so that whatever it inspires you to do, people are looking for big campaigns. There's a lot of organizations that are doing big campaigns. What we are, we sit on top of all these organizations around the world. We pull them together so they're working with each other. And then we bring in all these other advocates and we give you opportunities if you want. But if you don't want to, and you just want to sign up and say, I want to see Parkinson's end, and you put your name to it, that's enough, because the intention is set.
Yeah, actually, that goes. Someone had asked a question about what about hope to get off meds and become symptom free, and talked about two books: Rethinking Parkinson's Disease and Fighting Parkinson's and Winning. And so it's just so relates back to sort of what you're doing a little bit, Larry, with the Avengers, of like, we want to see a world like that.
Let me give you an example. Our first meeting ever with our organizations, we had about 40 of them that had initially signed up. Our first meeting, there was Parkinson's Africa had just raised $10,000 of a new organization. They wanted to buy levodopa for people in Africa that weren't able to get it. They said that on the call. Another group came on and said, "Hey, we know where to buy it and how to get it in our hands. But we don't know how to get it on the ground." And then a third organization said, "Oh, if you get us the medicine, we're on the ground every week. We can deliver it." Within 3 months, we had $10,000 worth of levodopa on the ground in Africa in the hands of people who needed it. And last year we did $20,000 worth. And that's the types of things we can do once we are all working in the same direction and working as a global issue as opposed to just a local issue. It is localized because everybody's issues are different. If you're in Africa, you're trying to convince your neighbor that it's not witchcraft. If you're in Vancouver, you're trying to figure out where the best place is to do Pilates. I mean, like it's a whole different worlds. So we can't, and I can't possibly know what everybody's needs are all over the world. But what I can do is help inspire people to just do what they can do locally.
Absolutely, Larry. And to shift the conversation just a little bit, I wanted to go back to Bradley. In the last time you spoke to us, you talked a little bit about positive psychology, which I thought was such an interesting word because, of course, I don't know about the rest of you, but that raises in me different thoughts of what that means. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. You know, positive psychology has been around for about the last 20 years, and it was really a shift, you know, for in the world of psychology for 100 years, we were focused on pathology. We were focused on what's wrong with the individual, as opposed to David Seligman came along and he said, why are we so focused on the negative? Why don't we focus on strengths that people have that can make their lives better? And so that's when Seligman came along and they started the whole movement of positive psychology, we began looking at things like resilience, post-traumatic growth, hope, optimism, self-efficacy, these things that we've talked about on here. And how do we foster the development of those things? Because we know without a doubt that those things, the people who have those characteristics live better lives. There's no question. And meaning in life fits into the positive psychology mindset. And what we know about meaning in life is it makes almost everything better. The literature is extremely strong, decreases depression, decreases anxiety, decreases blood pressure, increases life expectancy. Mortality goes down for people who have meaning in life. I kind of like that, right? And so all of these positive psychology things, it's just really a perspective shift. Nothing in physically in the world of psychology changed. It's just been that when we're dealing with people who are struggling with anything, we focus on what their strengths are. And we say, what do you have? And how can we build on that? You know, because it's real easy to go, yeah, you're depressed and you've got anxiety and you've got apathy, and man, that's a bad place to be. Who wants to hear that as a patient, right? That's not helpful. What's helpful is to say, you know what, you're really resilient. You've gone through a lot of stuff. Even though we know they're depressed and we know there's anxiety, let's talk about, wow, you've really been through a lot. And look where you're at today. You're very resilient in the way that you've dealt with this. You've got hope. And we can build on that. What do we need to do moving forward? And that makes total sense to me. And I think most of the psychology world has bought into that. It took Seligman a little while to get it going. I said David Seligman, it's Martin Seligman. My apologies. My mind just caught up with me. I know
how that is.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I still have some of those thought things too.
I'll tell you though,
Yeah.
the other thing about, I just lost my train of thought, but it's going to come real quick, I promise. What I was going to say, you were talking about the, repeat the essence of what you just said.
Focusing on positive attributes rather than what's wrong.
Right. And my experience with psychology and counseling is that they also give you the tools that you need in order to find those things on a daily basis.
Yeah. And you mentioned some of those, Larry, right? Mindfulness. Mindfulness is huge. It's such a simple thing that you can teach someone to do at home. And it's grounding yourself. It's learning how to let thoughts just go through your head and not ruminate and perseverate and sit and worry, right? Part of demoralization and uncertainty results in excessive worry. And what does worry get us? Absolutely nothing.
You know what worry is? Worry is the future. And so if you worry about the future and then you have to live it again, why are you living it twice?
Yeah.
Absolutely. And to your point, Bradley, it's such a universal idea. It's not just, for those of you who are living with Parkinson's, but those of you who have a loved one with Parkinson's or a friend or you're caring for someone, that this affects all of us.
And it's just life, right? Life shows up for every one of us every day. I don't have Parkinson's disease, but I have struggles that walk through my office door.
I disagree. If it happens to somebody in your family, you've got Parkinson's disease, buddy.
Yeah. Well, all right. I'm with you on that. But from a professional standpoint, I have those things that I have to deal with every day. And it's how I look at them. And it's which lens do I have on that I'm looking at this problem through. I can look at
I love that.
Yeah.
I love the lens. I use the lens analogy in the radio for talk show hosts.
It's great.
You don't have to look at, think about the politics right now. Everybody's looking at things through politics. Why don't you look at things through life as a person with Parkinson's, or life as a dad, or life as somebody who's, been to college, or somebody who grew up on a farm, or whatever your lenses are. You got about probably 1,000 of them each. You get to choose how you view what's happening to you.
That's right. Yeah. And I talk to my students about that all the time. And it's the old adage of seek to understand rather than to be understood, right? That changes my perspective of how I deal with others. I want to understand. I know what Parkinson's is. I want to know what it is for you, because it's not the same for every person that I talk to, right? I just had a conversation earlier with a guy, and it's an N of 1. That's the study of Parkinson's disease, because Larry's experience is very different from my mom's, I'm sure. And some are tremor, some are gait, some are cognitive. Some don't have symptoms for 10 years. Other at the end of 2 years are in bad shape. You just don't know.
But Orlando Jack mentioned the cognitive behavior specialist.
Yeah,
that's very helpful, Jack. You're right.
Yeah, and it's so it's important, and it's listening, right? It's understanding. And I learn from every person that I have a conversation with about Parkinson's disease. I can read all this stuff in a journal. I can read all the literature, and I can understand what it is that's going on and where we're at in the research. I get all that. But what matters to me more is, number one, how is that research going to affect Larry Gifford, right? We have it published in all these journals, and I talk about this frequently. Unfortunately, we as researchers forget to write for the end user. If my mom will tell me that, she'll read something I wrote and she'll go, Brad, I don't even understand what you're saying. And the challenge is, I want to write for the end user, but as soon as I submit that to the Journal of Parkinson's Disease, that editor is going to send it back and say, who are you? Right? So we end up writing for each other, all the professionals in the community. And that's one of the areas I think that we can grow, is how do we, and it's called knowledge translation. It's how do we take information from science and get it to the end user?
Well,
and it's critical.
The other aspect of that is having patients or people with Parkinson's part of the process from inception through conclusion.
Yes.
And not just as grateful participants, but as partners.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
Totally agree. We just, and I think we might have talked about this the other day, Larry, when we had this initial conversation, but we just finished a survey where we actually asked people with young onset Parkinson's disease what their needs are, right? Because the research assumes we know what your needs are. And so we write and we research and we publish. But my question was, what do they want? And nobody's ever asked. There's not any literature on they ask the typical onset, 62 and older, but nobody's asked the young onset. And it was good information. We got 20 different things that people listed that said, these are the things that we struggle with. And so now we have a game plan of, all right, these are the things we struggle with. How do we develop an intervention that helps these things?
But that's also local, because it's within that group. Because you interview 20 other people, you get 20 other responses.
Yeah.
And so that's why we need to have that idea, that global idea of a survey, but then implement it locally everywhere so we can meet the needs of everyone.
Yeah, yeah. And it was a national survey. So we, at least United States wise, it was national. So again,
but even town to town, I mean, you can get a DBS specialist in New York like that, but if you're in Iowa, forget it.
And it's hard, and it takes time to figure all that out locally. Yeah. How do you access the local people? And that's the other thing that Bass talked about in the video was you need to participate in research, right? I can tell you from my perspective how hard it is to get people to participate in research. I do it all the time. I send it out nationally and I get 300 respondents. I'm like, wow, that's difficult. Yeah. And so it's tough. And I guess my solution is, how can we put all of our heads together? Those of us who want to see change and go, let's do something different.
Yeah.
Let's touch the people who need it. And let's ask you, Larry, what is it that you think that your group of influencers think we need to do? And that's a great question. Get the answer and let's try to make it happen.
Yeah, and I would say urgency is the key for the PD Avengers. Is what we're trying to do is bring urgency to the cause of Parkinson's, because we are the overlooked disease, because there's not the urgent. Well, you're not going to die from it. Well, actually, you can die from it, and people keep those stats. But regardless, it's a long-term disease.
Yeah,
and so people don't have the urgency because there's other things that are going to kill you first. But this is 30 years, 40 years, or 50 years of suffering, of torture for some people.
Yeah.
And which is, there's that debate. Would you rather go painful in 2 years or have long suffering pain for 30?
Yeah.
It depends on, I think your perspective changes depending on which disease you have.
That's right. That's right.
And also, Larry, I mean, what I hear you talking about is the stigma around Parkinson's. Like, there's a stigma, right, about what that looks like. Bradley brought it up early on, in your video, you talk about, you had all these questions of, what does this mean for my life? Because I'm assuming, and maybe I shouldn't assume, but from that stigma of what we imagine Parkinson's looks like in different people.
Well, sure. And then everything from I applied to get a handicap placard. Well, I felt guilty about that. Because I'm like, well, but I'm, now I'm 50 years old and I've got a handicap placard. That doesn't seem right, but I need it and I like it. It's like, take the benefits that you can get, because there's not a lot of silver linings to Parkinson's, but there are some. And if actually, I helped write a paper about it. So if you look up silver linings and Parkinson's online, there's a paper that I helped write about that, because I think it's important to find the things in life, like the community is a silver lining. Like the people that I've met through this horrible disease, it's almost worth having the disease, but frankly, I'd rather have not met any of you, but I love you all.
Yeah. And I think, mentioning stigma, that's an area we didn't spend much time on today, but it's another area that I believe holds a lot of promise for some research, talking about what role does stigma play in your desire to go and be active in the community.
Yeah,
it's huge, Larry,
it's huge right now. So PD Avengers is about to launch a 3 to 5 year campaign on stigma. The World Parkinson Congress has a committee about it. And then just last week at the World Health Organization had their World Health Assembly, the 75th, and they approved a 10-year plan to address stigma in neurological diseases. And so they've got a whole action plan for every country in the United Nations. And I actually helped write that. We're going to present that publicly later this month, June 15th, I believe it is. And so I'm working with the WHO on actually activating that worldwide. And so that stigma is, if we can break down some of those walls, then we get past that and it opens up a whole new world.
And I believe as well, for those of you who join our programs, we are having a NeuroLife Online program on stigma, I think in the next week or two. So please look out for that as well. I agree, Larry, this is such and Brad, it's such an important topic. And I know we don't have a lot of time left. We only have a few minutes left, but I wanted to ask both of you, I guess the last question I have is there someone in your life, and this goes back to what you were talking about, Bradley, about like listening to other people and asking those questions. So is there someone in your life or someone that you know that inspires you, or, you know, what is their story and how does that motivate you to, you know, live your life in kindness and in hope?
Gosh, how much time do we have?
Right. Like
I told you we had 3 minutes left, 2 minutes left.
I mean, you know, my mom certainly is at the top of that list, but Heather Kennedy is a great friend of mine, and she has inspired me in my work, and she has connected me to so many people, and I've watched how she lives her life with Parkinson's and is just an ebullient personality and incredibly positive. And so aside from my own mother, that would probably be one of the people who is incredibly important in my life.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm obviously inspired by my wife and son, but from a Parkinson's perspective, and they play an important role in my Parkinson's, by the way, and we can't forget the care partners and the care team, because it's really important. Amatola Thomas has been a huge inspiration to me. Seeing what she's done with her advocacy and launching Parkinson Africa, and she's one of the original PD Avengers. I mean, but there's so many. There's Matt Eagles we talk about an amazing, resilient, positive influence on the community. He's great. Sonia Mather and Tim Hague. I mean, I could go on and on and on and on and on and on. I mean, they're just hugely inspiring people. And, we could talk for 3 more hours about all the people that have inspired me.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I know I asked a very challenging question for the last couple of minutes, and I did want to thank Kelly, who has been putting some links in the chat. So we do have the live stream on stigma on Tuesday, and so please register for that if that's of interest to you. She was able to find the paper that you wrote, The Silver Linings of Parkinson's Disease. If you aren't able to grab it from the chat, please feel free to reach out to us after the program, and we'll make sure to send that along to you. But yes, I agree with Christine. Larry and Bradley, you both really encourage all of us, and we're just so grateful that you joined us today, and so grateful to the University of Rochester for this terrific program they put on and partnering with us. So since it's the end of the hour, so I know
Thank you.
Thank you
very much. So enjoyable. Good to see you again, Larry.
It's great. Let's catch up again offline.
Love to.
And so what we typically do at the end, we love if you can turn on your cameras and give everybody a nice wave goodbye, and just thank you to Larry and to Bradley for joining us today. And we will see you next time. Have a wonderful, wonderful weekend, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.